Greetings and welcome me back to the functional world. I pretty much dropped out around pandemic time. You know, once you get into your older age, you start valuing your time more. You start thinking about it differently. Like, do I want to spend my time doing this or would I prefer to do something else? Basically, what I did was, in terms of the tarot, I did a hermit stint. I went a few years just thinking about everything in my life, and really a lot of it, well, a lot of it was empty nest syndrome. I never had any children, human children, but all of my pets have died. My last pet, my cat Jacob, he died in December of 2022. And I've never been without a pet in my whole entire life. And, well, then it was just me and my husband. I was no longer just focused on the welfare of the pet, especially in Jacob's later years. He developed nasal cancer, and we had to med him, and he was real finicky with his eating habits. It's like he would only he was a cat he did not recognize dry food as food. He would only eat fancy feast wet food. At first it was only grilled, but then in his middle age he started eating the ground food as well. So, ooh, that was quite an expansion for Jacob. But yeah, those pets were my world. I had cats, birds, dogs, all throughout my life. I've never been without a pet, and now it's just me and my husband. And frankly, it hasn't been the greatest marriage. A lot of it was, I think about those vows, for better or for worse, for richer, for poor. Well, I definitely got the for worse and for poorer. And I don't even understand why. It just doesn't make any sense. But that's the part where, well, I'm in my 60s and trying to make sense of how everything turned out. Self improvement, self actualization. I mean, it's now or never, baby. Huh? Now or never. When I say I don't understand how it all turned out this way, it's because it's hard to even explain. I guess that's why I've never really bothered. I mean, I try, but nobody understands. Nobody understands what it's like when you come from a dysfunctional background. I mean, you're born into that, so you don't, it takes decades to figure out that that's even what's been your motivator. Dysfunctional beliefs, limiting beliefs, things like that, low self esteem. I seem to have had a pattern with men to take up with men who my relationship with them was dependent on them getting approval from someone else. I seem to have a pattern like that with the previous men in my life. And my current husband, well, I say my current husband, it's not like there's been another husband. I got with him when I was 23, so it's not like I knew my a hole from my hole in my head back then. I couldn't tell the difference. It's 23. Not to diss any 23-year-olds. I think 23-year-olds now probably, well, they do have access to much more information than I ever had, so no disintended to younger folks. In fact, I like younger folks quite a bit, but that's another topic. But getting back to the topic of what the heck happened in my life and where the heck you been for several years now, Marie, where you been? Well, one of my old punk rock friends sent me a message via Facebook. Apparently, the message came in April, but I was busy, very busy in April. That's again another story to tell. But I never saw the message, and I don't know, just screwing around on Facebook today. Was it last night? Last night, and I saw the message, and I'm like, he posted a picture of it was from the last days of O'Banion's last 2 weeks at O'Banion's. That was a original Chicago punk rock club. It's the second punk club right after Lemaire's. And I'm like, what is that circulating on the internet? That whole picture? Oh my God. And I've noticed in my hermit time now, every time the topic of punk rock comes up in my head, I think to myself, I wish I was dead. And that just comes up randomly, but consistently. So uh, it's not going to take deep analyzing to figure that, oh, I seem to be harboring some hurt feelings there. Some type of pain is revealing itself with that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm what they call a highly sensitive person. I've discovered in recent years, thanks to YouTube, access to all this information. And I'm like, yep, that's me, highly sensitive person. I'm always feeling everything and thinking about stuff real deeply. It's a real pain in the butt, really, because it makes life difficult to constantly be analyzing everything. And yeah, that comes from the dysfunctional past. It's a survival thing where you just need to have this need to be perfect. Otherwise, well, you're gonna get you're gonna get hit. So yeah, what's driving my psyche. It's like my dad used to hit me when I was a kid, and I was raised by nuns later. Again, another story. But yeah, they used to hit you. Corporal punishment was pretty common back then, so I'm motivated by I don't want to get hit. That's my motivator. So I have this way of watching. I watch body language and feel the vibes of the room. See if I'm in or out. Run. But weirdly, yeah, back in the punk rock days, that was not a developed skill. In fact, I was like running into trouble. It was like I was running into the burning building. What a bizarre thing that was. I'm just not too sure what that was. That whole rebellion thing. I mean, it's in my nature to be rebellious. I mean, like, I just don't want to be pushed around because I took enough of that in my childhood, so I'm not having it now, at least if I'm aware of it. That's the thing, awareness of it. That takes decades to develop. That's the challenge right there. That's what I found. I sure am rambling all over here, but hey, why not? It's what old people do. As a matter of fact, there is one story I will indulge in. When I it was in my 20s, I made friends with this older woman. I'll just call her Mrs. Mrs. Jones. Why not, Mrs. Jones? And she was, I guess, in her 80s or 90s. I don't know. She was up there. And I was in my 20s, and I never had any grandparents, so I kind of adopted her as a grandparent, and she kind of adopted me and my husband. And I used to go out to dinner with her, and it was just a real nice experience. Where the hell was I going with that one? I'll probably cut this out because I have no idea where I was going with that. I'll have to rewind this and go back. Yep, and find out what the heck I was talking about. All right, I just remembered where I was going with my story with Mrs. Jones. Yeah, she was. The thing that I liked the most about her was that she would tell the same stories over and over and over again. And every single time I took delight in hearing her stories, even though it was always the same. I don't know. It just seemed like a quaint thing about her. So, just a just a thought there for no particular reason. Oh, I also remembered to turn the lights back on too. You may or may not have noticed that that other segment was a little darker and a little more on the cooler side. But that probably contributes to the overall tone of that particular segment. So we'll go with it. What the heck? I'm just in my first video experimental stage. So yeah, anyway, getting back to that picture that my old punk rock friend sent me in Messenger. It's like, oh man, that was me and my husband. We had just started going out then. That was back in 1981, closing of O'Banion's. It was taken at O'Banion's. And I'm thinking, man, that's circulating on the internet, huh? Oh, how weird. Yeah, that was a photo by Ken Mearswa. And back when what was that, back in 2000s, when we got back into the scene, round two of the scene, you could say. So we first dropped out in, must have been about 87. Then, because I had put up that website, CPP, I started hearing from some of my old peers from the old days in the scene. Then I started hearing about the new scene, or at least new at that time, or new to me, Pilsen little village scene, the Latino punk scene. And those folks, they started communicating with me on the message board, and I'm always a curious sort, so a friend that I had met there invited me to one of his shows, and I went to it. I liked the show a real lot. I like the rawness and realness. It's very authentic feeling, kind of old timey feeling, because it wasn't. It was in a basement in this place called Rancho Huevos in Bridgeport. It was a dump. You had to climb down these into this rank basement. It was great. it got so hot in there with all, it was tiny and all these people were in there and the pipes started sweating and that stuff is dripping on you and you feel everybody else's sweat on you. Well, yes, that was post-pandemic time. We still thought, woo, immune systems. Or actually, we didn't even think about any of that, really. But in any case, yeah, that was a great experience. Enjoyed that. So anyway, I sent my old punk friend. I have I took a picture of a copy of that picture when it was originally posted. That was from the Coolest Retard zine. It's a photo by Ken Mearswa that was documenting the last 2 weeks of O'Banions. And it was a weird thing because I had just started going out with Larry then, and the picture was posted right next to a picture of my old boyfriend Jim, and then right underneath the picture of Larry and I was the picture of his new girlfriend. And it was just so weird. Everything was just so weird back then, but I don't know. Stuff just happened, so the way I dealt with everything was just, roll with it, roll with the punches. Whatever's going on is going on. But I don't know. Back in the, they used to call, they used to say that a lot of punks were dealing with their demons when we started having, well, when I started going to the O'Banions reunions back in the 2000s, when I first saw some people, we could read at each other with, "Oh my God, you're still alive! You survived it!" Because I don't know, we weren't, it was pretty wild back then. Punk rock was pretty wild. Well, read my book. As I said on it, you hate it, curse it, respect it, and worship it. That's always how I felt about punk rock. It's like, yeah, my first thought now is I wish I was dead when I think about it because what I was doing then, I always felt unacceptable. Well, probably because my parents gave me away to nuns at a boarding school. It's when I was 7. I laugh because, I mean, what else are you going to do? But yeah, it's like my husband talks about, well, he was worried about getting abandoned. Well, I was actually abandoned. They dropped me off at a Catholic boarding school. So I was alone. Where was I going with that one? Damn, I'm gonna have to rewind a lot of this stuff just to figure out what the hell I'm talking about. Because, yeah, there's defense mechanisms at play. You block. I think it must be like how childbirth works, how mothers forget about all the pain they had to undergo during delivery of, that's what, basically in my hermit stage I've been walking through the fire, confronting my crucible, my trial by fire, confronting the shadow self, the demons. What is driving me? How can I create a life and a Marie that I actually want? Because I feel like I've been driven by just outside forces. Mostly because, like I said, yeah, as a kid, I was dropped off, so I didn't get a lot of guidance. So just making stuff up, mostly picking up what I could from TV. A lot of the stuff everything I know I learned from TV. That's probably why I picked up so readily to YouTube. And that, again, is another story. Holy cow, I'm noticing that I have several stories to tell here. How interesting. Hmm. Well, my feeling is that that whole punk rock thing, it was, well, as most things are in my life, some weird combination of dysfunctional but really hopeful and kind of positive in its own way. I mean, this was the mantra of the era. No future, democracy, truth, leader, politics, hero, education, law, nation, career. All these words are used to brainwash you. But don't believe us, we use them too. That whole cynicism thing. And yeah, it was, I remember feeling very cynical. That whole Nixon thing, I mean, I'm what they call Generation Jones. I'm that in between generation that, well, apparently they just made up because we don't actually fit in as I'm 10 years behind the baby boomers and 10 years ahead of the Gen Xers. And I had both experiences, so I can understand both sides, but I don't actually identify with either. I still remember Kennedy being president and the sadness when he died, and mostly probably that was because my family was very Catholic and, well, losing a Catholic president and getting a Catholic president to begin with was a big deal to my family. So that's why that stuck out in my mind. That was a shaping event. And of course, all the racial turmoil. It's like Martin Luther King and the Black Panther Party for self-defense, all the murders and the racism. And it was weird too because I would sometimes get to come home on the weekends from boarding school, and my friends went to public school and they were experiencing race riots. And it was funny. Well, I don't mean it was funny, but it was bizarre to me because in Catholic school, I couldn't even imagine such a thing because it was 100% authoritarian. I mean, you did not step out of line. It was like the nuns could read your mind. They knew what you were thinking before you even knew what you were thinking. In fact, it was best to not have a thought in your head because, they might pick up on that. So, but I'll tell you, everybody was afraid of the nuns. They used lumber to hit you. If it wasn't a ruler, it was Sister Stanislaus had a paddle, one of those with the ball paddle, except no, the ball was missing. She'd paddle you with that until it broke, or else she'd use not a 2x4, it was probably a 1x4. It was thin, but she taped it up. So she'd break it over your butt. And that was a memory I have of boarding school. We'd stand in line to take our spankings, and you'd want to try to get in the middle endish because the kids in the front end of the line, well, Sister Stanislaus still had all her energy to beat you with, so it was much more painful. Whereas by the middle, you're sort of just another invisible butt on her lap, and she's probably not paying attention. But you don't want to be anywhere near the end because she wants to make, that grand finale, that big performance. So strategy was to try to be somewhere in the middle of the end. It's just one of my early childhood memories I'd like to relate. But yeah, getting back to the punk rock thing, I guess, yeah, the reason I got into it was because it was a way for someone who felt so unacceptable, like I did, to feel okay about being unacceptable. I never felt like I fit in with the punk crowd. I had my own friends that I hung out with, my little group of friends, but I never felt like one of the cool people. I wasn't. I I didn't really have much of a personality then. I was just developing. I was just coming out of that whole, being raised under a authoritarian where you don't even consider your own thoughts. And then I apparently went to the other extreme. I think it was like Breaking Amish, really. Yeah, have you ever seen that TV show? Breaking Amish, where they give you, I think it's a year to go out in the world when you're Amish to experience the real world and find out if you actually want to commit to living by their values. But yeah, they typically go nuts. And that's what I did too, because I had no idea. My parents, they didn't notice or care about me. They had chronic illnesses that kept them very busy, so they were always in the hospital and trying to get, disability so that they could travel to the Mayo Clinic or Hot Springs, Arkansas, or whatever. I don't know, all their medical things, trying to get medical things done. So my father was a veteran, disabled veteran, so he would be he was admitted at the Heinz VA hospital for months at a time. So my mother couldn't handle taking care of me. She had multiple sclerosis, so she was very busy with that. So just couldn't handle me. I guess I was a difficult child because, well, like I say, I was always highly sensitive, and I always found it upsetting how she would say stuff to me like, I wish you were never
I
born. I
wish you
should
were
have
never
drowned you at
born.
birth.
I wish you were never
And I'm
born.
just like a little kid, and
I wish you were never born.
I don't know, I'm just
I
trying to
wish you were
figure
never
out,
born.
well, did I have something to do with that? That whole thing, it really set me up on this path in life where I've always tried to figure out why I'm here. I've always had this, well, because grew up in a religion, I've always tried to, I've just wondered, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? If my own mother's telling me I wish you weren't here and didn't want me, well, I realize now that I've actually spent most of my life trying to justify my existence, trying to prove that I exist. But I don't, I'm real introverted. I used to be what they called painfully shy when I was a kid. So it's hard for me to be out in the forefront, I'm scared of people, really. They're terrifying to me because you just never know what they're going to do next. So it's just easier for me. Frankly, I like this digital era where well, there's a screen between me and the world. Let's put it that way. If worse comes to worse, I can close the lid on my laptop here. Just saying. So don't mess with me. I might close the lid. So getting back to the punk rock thing. Well, another thing that comes, that's the dichotomy, the polarities with punk rock. It's on one hand, I think, man, I wish I was dead because there was so much negativity involved. But then at the same time, there was that hopefulness. And specifically, what I'm talking about is this, what I call the punk Bible. Well, I guess it was called the punk Bible back then, at least my little crowd. Says here, it's about doing something and getting off your ass, saying something, seeing what a shitty place this is, and what a jam it could be. We're anti-violent, we're anti-racist, and we're procreative. We're against ignorance. There is only one criterion. Does it threaten the status quo? And that's, yeah, a lot of that has to do from the Clash. And, the Clash, the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, the early days, the whole making it all up as we were going along. That's what made it okay to not be okay for me, as bizarre as that sounds. Punk rock made it okay for me to not be okay. I wasn't popular. I wasn't anything. Heck, it was no future. I had no future. Ain't it great? But then that's what I put on the book here. What I put here. Oh, that was a Ramones line. The future's bleak, ain't it neat? We ain't proud. Are your kids getting to you? Call and talk it over with another parent. 24-hour hotline for parents under stress. Call now. That was the Parents of Punkers hotline. It's like, yeah, how freaking hysterical was that, too? It's like, oh my God, we didn't even, I mean, seriously, compared to, the way people dress now, they thought it was like some big deal that people put soap in their hair and made mohawks out of it. We didn't even have, the super cool hair color methodologies that they have now. It's like everything was, I mean, now they have, fancy printed t-shirts. We just took, old ratty t-shirts and spray painted them with stencils. Huh. We were just making stuff up as we were going along. Everything it made not being okay, okay. And yeah, and now that I'm reflecting on it, I think that is an important thing because it's a step in the evolutionary process. Because we had to get to this point where we could see how ridiculous we were. I mean, do you notice how ridiculous we are? We humans, we're just so ridiculous. The way we're destroying our own planet and the way we're so mean to each other. I wonder why. I've been wondering about all these things in recent years, with this hermit thing I got going on. And yeah, I've been diving into this spirituality stuff because, like I say, I always wonder, well, why am I alive? What is this all about? I'm, I'm about to turn 66. Damn, I made it to 65. My parents only made it to age 62, both of them. Mother and father died at age 62. My grandparents on my mother's side died at 64. I don't really know much about my father's side. My grandmother died at 54. That was real young. Apparently my grandfather on that side, apparently he lived to be in his 80s or 90s or something. Apparently, he must have been alive when I was a kid. I could have met him. I don't know why my parents didn't introduce me to my family or anything. But that's another story. That's a whole different story. Why wouldn't they do that? I don't know. Go figure. Parents. I don't know what parents think. I never became a parent because, well, once I met my in-laws, I realized, well, I'm probably not going to get along well with you folks, and there's going to be some problems. And well, the one thing like I said, my mother used to tell me she wished I was never born, and I wondered, well, why'd you have me if you didn't want me? I mean, I probably didn't. Well, I sort of wondered. I think that there was a consciousness that you were supposed to love me. Why are you saying that stuff
I
to
wish
me?
you
I'm
were
not
never
too
born.
sure. Because I
Wish
don't
you were
hear
never born.
other parents saying stuff like that. I wondered. I've always wondered. So yeah, that's my whole deal. I'm somewhat emerging from my hermit phase, and I've been doing a lot of self-reflection. Frankly, I'm in a stage where I'm way into Tracy Chapman, and she one line she uses a lot is question all that you think you know. Man, that rings true. Question all that you think you know. I think so differently. But then again, I also know I'm the same too. That's the weird thing. It's more like coming full circle. That's really what it is. I've come full circle in a lot of where I started to how I think about things now. So, anyway, yeah, I'm starting to emerge almost like the cicadas, except, well, well, there might be some screaming. You never know. Yeah, there could still be some screaming. Well, they don't actually scream, but they're screechy, noisy things. I'm somewhat annoying like that, someone, I guess. Or maybe I'm just being negative. Negative self-emerging. But yeah, my whole deal at this point is trying to figure out why the heck am I actually alive and what is this all about and how can I make it better? Because for some reason I have some stupid desire. I've always had some stupid desire to try to make things better, try to improve them. I don't know what that is, but apparently a lot of people have that. I'm not the only one. That's what I'm liking about the younger people is these millennials. I identify a lot more with them than with anybody else I've encountered. The way they're going off grid and DIY things, and the way women do, they just do stuff. I mean, I thought I was liberated because, ooh, I was as wild as the men were, but well, that wasn't liberation. That was just, I guess that was just breaking the rules. That's part of evolution. It opened the doors for future generations to not have to fight the same battles, but I was not liberated. What's liberated is watching these women who actually build stuff, you know? I'm into van lifers, and I like watching, their independence, how they build out their vans, know how to use power tools and stuff. It's very inspirational to me. Yeah, YouTube is really one of the better things that ever happened to me in my life because it's opened up the world of regular people to me. Because I was an only child and an introvert, so I really have never known much about what other people do. So it's been way cool to get a glimpse into how other people are and what they think about. And what I'm really aiming for is to find my own tribe of people, other people who have similar interests to my own. That'd be way cool. So, signing off. Have a good one. Thanks for listening if you made it this far. Peace.